everybody. Very happy to be joined by AJ Aberford. In all that time we've been chatting, I didn't ask you what the A stood for.
It doesn't stand for anything. It's no, it's obviously a pen name. So AJ was a friend of my son's, and I just like the sound AJ. Aberford is a village in sort of north of Leeds, but I thought kind of marketing wise, AB, like a bit like AB taxis or Aardvark plumbers, the AB would get you to the top left of the shelf. So I chose AJ Aberford, but my real name is Tony Gartland.
So shall we call you Tony tonight?
You should do that. Yes, thank you.
Lovely. What would you like to start us off with an introduction to yourself and your books?
Yeah, I'm a relatively new author. First published last year. I brought out 3 books in quick succession. Just so you can see them. Bodies Underwater, and you can see a sort of the raft based around the migrant crisis in Malta with a Libyan background. Number 2, excuse me, Bullets in the Sand, again a sort of a follow-up from that, but both can be read as standalones, based again in Libya. Third one, moving across to Hawk at the Crossroads, which came out in sort of October last year, set in Turkey and is based around basically the Greek and the Turkish struggle for control of the Mediterranean. And then a change, Fire in a Mountain, which is set in Sicily and is more of a sort of a straightforward detection thing about a kidnap involving the erupting Mount Etna. So all my books are set in the southern Mediterranean with Malta at its base, featuring Inspector George Samit, who doesn't do a lot of police work, but he seems to get dumped into all these scenarios where he has all kinds of adventures. And I'll go on to explain a little bit about George, if that's okay.
Yeah.
George is the hero. He's henpecked. He's probably a bit overweight. He eats too much. He's a bit of a sort of an anti-hero in that sense. He's bullied by his boss. He's not your typical kind of main protagonist. But underneath, he's got a sort of a fairly strong moral compass. And during the course of the books, he starts to handle the corruption and the difficulties he finds in the Southern Med, and gradually moves up the police ranks. So it's as much about George's progression as a person, as an individual, and as a policeman, as it is about the narrative and excitement of the books themselves.
So we've got that you named yourself AJ to be near the top left of the shelf.
Yes.
Did you also choose Malta as a setting to set yourself out from the rest? Because
well, I live in Malta, and I'm speaking from Malta tonight. I've been here for this is my 9th year. When I came to Malta, it was for all the usual reasons. I'd retired. In Malta, the main language is English. They drive on the left. My wife also has an Italian mother. She has family in Sicily, which is only 100 miles to the north. So it suited us on very many levels. But when I came here, I was flabbergasted by the corruption, the sort of the island life. Everybody knows each other. It's amazingly small. There's an elite that runs the place. It's involved in money laundering, in oil smuggling, in all sorts of stuff that's going on. And obviously, when all this was brought to light by Daphne Caruana Galizia, the journalist, somebody put a bomb under a car. And basically, the headlines provided me with a lot of inspiration for the books. And when COVID came along, that's when I started to write. And the books fundamentally just wrote themselves from the headlines of the Southern Med, the Libyan crisis, what's been going on in Syria. And that's been the inspiration for the writing, really.
Sam has said that your covers are really striking.
Yeah, the covers, I mean, I like the covers, and I don't know whether to sort of, if I had my time again, whether I think they're a little bit macho. I mean, it's all about genre, and I think it's very hard, you to sort of try to fit the books into a particular genre. It's not sort of procedural crime. they're not sort of just totally boys' adventures. They're not all guns and trucks, you know, and this sort of thing. I like this one in particular, I probably would change. I think the sort of the trucks and the guns on the front really belie a gentler side and the humorous side of the stories that are within them. So yeah, on balance, I like the covers. I'm not quite sure I did myself the best favour when I started out by making them so kind of so macho.
Show us the one that's set in Turkey again, because that one looked really familiar when you showed it off.
Well, yeah, that's obviously the Hajj Sophia and the blue mosque, and the hawk is a Turkish fixer who works for the Turkish security forces, and is at the heart of their their oil industry. And he basically is a Machiavellian type of character who turns up in about 3 of the books. So the hawk flying over Turkey and the hawk flying over the southern Mediterranean is a bit of a motif. So yeah, no, I like that one. Yeah.
So have you been to some of the other places that you featured? So I'm guessing you've been to Sicily, Istanbul. I used to live in Istanbul. That's why I recognise the picture.
Yeah. Well, I've been to Istanbul several times. I haven't been to Libya, and a lot of the books are set in Libya. So the Libyan stuff was a bit of a challenge. I've been to Tunisia, spent quite a bit of time in Tunisia, but it's amazing what you can do on Google Earth. I spent a lot of time on Google Earth looking at sort of desert landscapes, a lot of research on the vegetation, on, you know, you tracking the road, and there's some road journeys and you try to follow the routes that people would have taken. Then research, as I say, the sort of the flora and the fauna, and try and bring that into the story itself. So even the places I haven't been, I have a very good sort of visual picture in my mind of what they look like, and I think quite visually. So that's a big driver for me. To get that right. I would never just have a go at making something up. You know, I would always research it and look into it.
I always think of Istanbul as being like a really multi-sensory hit, because there's a lot of scent and things that hit you when you're traveling in the different parts.
Yeah, I mean, I love Istanbul for its kind of, you know, it's east and it's west. And when you go to eastern into Anatolia, you know, you're heading off into that sort of western Mediterranean part, western sort of eastern, you know, Europe part, or almost onto the Syrian and the Turkish border. And the next book to come out is set on that sort of area, on the Syrian border, and involves sort of Syrian refugee camps, etc., etc. And poor George is part of an EU team who's thrown into that environment to try and uncover corruption. So I spent a lot of time looking at sort of Idlib and that sort of area of Western Syria. And then, of course, after I'd written the book, it was hit by that terrible earthquake. So I had to go back and write the earthquake into the story. You couldn't just ignore it. But yeah, fascinating country, and I would love to go. I haven't been to Eastern Turkey, but I would love to go to Eastern Turkey.
We've had some hellos. Leslie has said hello, and Laura has.
Hello, Leslie. Hello, Laura.
Leslie said, are you not worried if your books highlight the corruption in Malta?
Well, originally that was part of having a pen name, but then my good friends at Hobart Books put my picture on the back. So that really, I blew that one. But no, I think I don't know. I think they've got bigger problems to worry about, really. They are an elite, you know. I don't think I'm going to sort of ruffle their feathers too much. But I do have I have one book 5, which is ready to go. That's being copy edited. That's coming out in the autumn, fingers crossed. And book 6, I've done the second draft of, which is set purely in Malta. And that is probably a little bit more provocative. And that is about a kind of a state capture of Malta by a hostile force, fundamentally, shall we say, who blag and blackmail their way into power, making use of Malta as a naval base, because obviously it sits in the middle of the Mediterranean and has been a strategic centre ever since the time of the Knights of Malta back in the 1500s. So, but it's a fair question. I always look under the car before I leave the house.
Sam has said, and we're not going to get away without addressing this question, because there's a few comments about it further down. She said, you've had a varied career by the looks of it, various law work, but she's mainly interested in the craft brewery. We touched on this, didn't we, before we went live? And I think I've bought some of the beer from that brewery.
Good for you. Well done. Thank you. You know, we've been going for a long time. Well, I say a long time. We've been going since 2005, selling beer. And at the minute, it's tough. You know, we're quite big. You know, we employ about 40 people. And only yesterday, Black Sheep went into administration, you know, up at Masham. And that's a big national brand. Our energy costs are through the roof. We buy 5 million bottles a year, and glass is expensive. CO2 has doubled. Our grain comes from the Ukraine. So it's tough out there, you know, and obviously then we've got cost of living on top, and beer is discretionary spend. So, you know, we're holding our own, our heads above water, but it's a difficult time for the independent brewers. So fingers crossed. But yeah, as I said, I'd been here for 8 or 9 years, so I still own the chunk of the brewery. But I was the brewer. You know, I had the Wellingtons on, the shovel in my hand for thick end of 10 years. So it was cold, wet, and lonely work. Everybody thinks it's a fantastic job, but when you're down there at 5 o'clock in Christmas morning, checking the tanks and doing your temperatures and all this sort of stuff, you feel like the last man on earth. So, but I've enjoyed every minute of it.
But if anyone fancies sampling some, do you want to give them the name of what they're going to be going to buy?
Well, it's Saltaire Brewery, and we're 15 minutes from the Shipley station, which comes out of Leeds. And there's the bar, and we open the bar weekends, I think Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we have a good turnout at the bar. But if people really want to, I'm shamelessly plugging the brewery, you have to forgive me. But if people really want to enjoy themselves, we have a beer festival, which we get several thousand people to on the site on the beginning of September. And there'll be 4 bars, huge marquees, music, food, and that's when you can taste almost everything that we do. So I'll commend that one to you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sam's even put the website link in.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, great. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, excellent.
William Shaw is watching, who's an absolute legend of a author. He has said, we don't have enough thrillers set in foreign lands apart from the US. When he was a kid, the charts were full of them. Can you speculate why that is?
I don't know, really. I think it comes down to genre. I think, you know, it's been something I've kind of resisted and something I probably couldn't do. But I think if you actually, you know, increasingly people say, you know, what are your comparators? What are the comps? You know, what genre are you in? And you almost put into this funnel where you think, right, I'm going to write the police procedural, all the, you know, the awards and the prizes and all that sort of competitions, all that sort of stuff, more or less require you to be so. I think to put yourself out there and write something a bit more esoteric is tricky. I mean, Robert Dawes has done a series on Gibraltar from the Holbeck stable, and that's quite good. That captures the atmosphere nicely. There's some good French stuff around which I've read. There was all the Scandi stuff and the Icelandic books, you know. But I think on balance, I mean, there is a bit which is, you know, non-UK, but I don't think there's an awful lot for the British market that comes out of North Africa, Middle East, or, you know, Africa as a whole, really. And there's such vibrant landscapes and such sort of great energy in these places, and great excitement, great political intrigue, and of course bags of corruption. You know, it's fantastic for an author. It's such a deep vein to get involved in. But I don't know. Maybe there's basically the pressure to write to genre.
I'm a big fan of Alistair Liddell's books. They're set in Georgia.
Right,
and
okay.
He was nominated for the debut prize at Bloody Scotland.
Right.
I think it's his first one, and he self-publishes.
Right, from Georgia. Yeah.
They're set in Georgia, and they are really good because they're very unique, and you don't think of, like yours with Malta, you don't sort of go out and see lots of books set there. So it piques your interest when you get.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things that interest me about it. I mean, I always write about things that interest me. It's no matter. I had a little project where I tried to write to genre, and I just found myself drifting off writing about things that interested me. And I can't help it. I've now just realised that that's just how it's going to be from now on. But I think sort of writing about the geopolitics, and there's so much happening in the world at this point, I think is really helpful. And I think a lot of the feedback that I get from people who've read the books are about the fact that they're informative. The fact, I definitely thought what's happening. Oh, that was interesting. I think that's great. And I sort of read the book. Was it The Power of Geography? Tim Marshall, I think it is, and great books about geopolitics and accessible, easy to understand. And the world is such an interesting place, and increasingly it's such a small place. With podcasts and with sort of the 24/7 news cycle, everybody knows what's going on. And I think no longer are these places distant and mysterious. They're within reach and within grasp. And it makes them more interesting and more accessible subject matter for authors to play with.
I'm just looking to see who's one of these comments in our chat. So someone said the only African thriller writer they come across so far is Femi Kayode. I don't know if I've said that right, who's in Nigeria, which William recommends. He said is great. Janet has said she's read the first 2 books by Alistair Liddell. Oh no, she's read your book, sorry, the Zamet books. She's read the first 2 Zamet books, and what really gets her is the heat. It bounces off the pages. When she's cold, she enjoys reading about the heat and humidity.
Yeah. I think the heat and humidity are great. And the other thing I always like to try and capture, and I think I read it I'm not quite sure. One of the writing books was about smell, about people will describe things and describe colours. What people don't put in is what did it smell like, and it's one of the great senses that gets left unexplored. So I do try to sort of bring that sort of smell into it, particularly when you're on an island, and you can smell the sea or the iodine or sort of the musty seaweed and all that stuff. And yeah, it's describing the environment, particularly when you're in somewhere like Malta, and your day is defined by how hot it is and which side of the street you walk on to keep walking in the shade. You've got to be conscious of that because it's such a driver of behaviour.
And I think that's what will then make your books really interesting to people, is because unless you've been to, a lot of people do go to Malta as a destination, but if you haven't been there, you're sort of also learning about the place through the fiction, which I think a lot of people like to do. People love to kind of travel in books, don't they?
Exactly. And I see sort of people getting off in Malta in February in their flip-flops and their shorts, thinking it's Tenerife, and they're in for a big shock because it's quite nippy in the southern Med in the winter. You've seen pictures in Syria and these places with snow on the ground. It's we don't get snow because we're an island, but Malta's fantastic with its history, and with the knights going back to the 1500s. And they sort of basically built the place up until 1799 when Napoleon came. Then the Brits kicked Napoleon out about 2 or 3 years later, and then they were here up until sort of mid-60s, and had it all the way through the Second World War. Became a naval base. So there's layers of history, and the construction shows that, and the cultural development shows that. So I would extol its virtues, not just as a land of Italian food and beaches and good weather, but also as a cultural centre worth exploring.
You're so correct about the weather as well, aren't you? I remember being in Istanbul in the winter and it being like thick with snow. Like you could step off the curbs and it'd be up to like past your ankle in snow, and then going home and people being like, "Why aren't you tanned?"
Well, this is Ankara, isn't it? I mean, Ankara is middle of the Anatolian plateau.
I lived in Istanbul. Not
really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've been to Ankara, but I lived in Istanbul.
Yeah.
Laura says the only way she can do hot countries is via books because she's Irish and doesn't do hot very well.
Well, there's lots of good air conditioning around. Don't worry about it too much. I always just stay in the pool. I sort of sit in the pool up to about here, and just have the Kindle up and read. That's about a hat. That's the best way of doing it.
Sam says your books are available on Kindle Unlimited. In the group, there's been lots of discussions about how useful or not that is for readers and authors alike. I know both me and Sam keep Kindle Unlimited. It's quite good for when we do these author chats because we like to buy as many of the books as we can.
Yeah.
Or get them through Kindle Unlimited. But how useful is it for authors?
It's difficult to say. As I say, the first book came out in July, so it hasn't been 12 months yet. In terms of sales, I mean, the big hit in terms of sales has been paperbacks into Malta, and that's been a couple of thousand. So that's been great. It's and it's in supermarkets, it's in airports. It has made some penetration. I do think the Kindle Unlimited has not done that well for me for whatever reason. It's the sort of the ebook sales really that sort of eclipse it. So my own experience, and I'm just really discovering the commercials of being an author. I wouldn't say I really understand it yet. It's taken me long enough to get to grips with writing the damn things, let alone selling them. So I'm not really sure about that yet. Hopefully, Kindle Unlimited will start to develop. I'm not sure who would buy it as an ebook and who would actually stick it onto Kindle Unlimited. I don't know what the different drivers are.
I don't know either. I mean, I do both. I buy ebooks and Kindle Unlimited, and I buy paperbacks, but I've got too many books. That's the problem.
Well, I tend to forget I've got Kindle Unlimited. I go, $2.99, I'll have that. And before I know it, I bought it where I could have put it on Kindle Unlimited. So that's just laziness on my part.
While we're on that subject, while we're on Kindles and things like that, what have you read recently that you've really enjoyed?
I knew you would ask me this, so I do have my Kindle in front of me, which is the sort of the.
You've come prepared. This is very good because I never tell people that I'm going to ask it. Sam's really nice, but if you ever come back, Sam asks people beforehand. She pre-warns people, and I never do.
Yeah, no, well, I guessed you'd do that. So the thing I've read recently, which I really, really enjoyed, well, I just read Shuggy Bain, which I found incredibly depressing. I mean, a brilliant, brilliant book, but brought me right down. But addiction and abuse and all that sort of stuff, it was really, really painful to read. I'm recently reading a Hobeck author at the minute, Linda Laversa, Bloodlines, which is great. A good old plug for the Hobeck authors. And The Cloisters I really enjoyed by Katie Hayes. And I think it was a bit of a supernatural thing. I'm not going to say it's a bit of tarot into it, but it's based in an arts museum. And there was a lot of, a New York Arts Museum, and she herself is an art historian. And I love these books where you learn something as you go through. So it's not just a story, but it's set in a different world, and someone's got real deep knowledge of that world. And her understanding of art made that particular book great. One of my good reads of the year. And I love political thrillers. Peter Hannington, who used to be an editor on the Today programme, A Cursed Place. I just read Immortals, The Lincoln Highway, which was fantastic. An American book, a road movie, a sort of a road book, really, a bit of Kerouac, a bit of that sort of genre. Tell me when to stop because I can keep going.
No, that's good. Have you read Peter Haynes' books? Peter Haynes. He is a politician, obviously. And he writes some cracking thrillers called the first one's the Rhino Conspiracy, and then there's the Elephant Conspiracy. They're both brilliant.
No, I haven't.
And obviously, very political.
Good. Well, that's a good tip.
Because he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I've read Preston's, Robert Preston. Trying to think what it's called. I read that. Peter Harrington. And the one I really, really loved, and you like this, Caroline, was Samamia, The Calm,
Yeah, the Calm.
which is set in Bradford, which is where I've spent many, many years, where I have a house. And I did actually try to write a Bradford story. And it obviously involved Asian community and was sort of, cultural appropriation was flashing in front of me all the time. But if you have Asian characters, then you have to sort of describe Asian houses, Asian culture, Asian speech, Asian food. And I'm so glad I didn't do much with it, because the Sami Mia book, The Calm, takes you to Bradford, and it's exactly the book I would have wanted to write. And that was a great read, and very, very, very near home.
Yeah, there's some fabulous Bradford books. There's Liz Mystery writes some cracking ones in Bradford. Yeah. You'd probably like William's books that he writes as G.W. Shaw as well.
Yes, yes. And the Red Lal, was it? I forget the name. He was a lecturer at Bradford University. I read that was some years ago. That was again set in sort of Bradford drug culture, and he was, I say, lecturer at Bradford College. I think he did peace studies. I'm not quite sure what his subject was, but it was right in the heart of the sort of the grim old area of Girlington. It's good old inner city Bradford. It was a grimy, gritty story, which then flipped back to Pakistan and the family in Pakistan, and that was very authentic. And of course, Donna Leon. I'm reading. There's lots of Donna Leon, but I always wonder how she can write. Was it 33 books in the Brunetti series? I'm not sure actually what my limit would be with George, but I've got sort of 5 written, 6 the first draft's been done. I can't see myself doing 33 books, that's for sure. It's a life's work.
Some people just write really fast though, don't they? And put out, a couple of books a year. I think it just depends on what your writing pace is like.
It's how far you can take the characters, though. I mean, I can write fairly quickly. I think I can get through, certainly, I would say 3 or 4 easily in a year. And that's probably from blank page to shelf, I don't know whether that's actually quick or not, to be frank, but I can do 3 or 4. But I mean, it's, what have you got? What's left to be said about a character after 10 books? The character's got to progress and be different from but with Brunetti, it still just seems to stay the same. He's timeless. He just goes on. And one, you forget which ones you've read and which ones you haven't, and you pick one up, you think, I've already read this. It's, I don't know. I'm probably being unkind.
You've got a few agreements about Simon Mia. William and Donna both think the book is incredible. Sam says she's interviewing Jenny Enser of the Hobeck family soon, and her last book was great. I think this might be Janet again, has asked, are any of the characters in your book based on people you know?
Actually, they're probably not.
If they were.
They're probably not. I mean, no, I wouldn't have said so. I don't have the temptation to do it. I mean, I think there's enough uniqueness about each of the characters. I mean, the principal characters, I mean, that they're not from the UK. They're not sort of, from my group or my set. They live in a different place. They have a different kind of heritage, a different set of behaviors. Different things influence them. They come from different cultures, so it wouldn't necessarily fit. Though when I do get cross with my wife, I do say she's based on the evil witch in Natasha, but that's only when I get cross with her.
Oh, that's mean.
Probably is. I'm joking.
You're allowed to sort of joke about things like that. It's kind of, are you never tempted to write something in? Not, or like author auction away a character, or sometimes authors auction a character, don't they?
I do sort of sometimes out of petty spite drop a name or a place or something that's offended me. And I took my wife, and she has some elderly relatives, 3 lovely old ladies, some aunts over from Rome, and it was a birthday, and they all got dressed in their best frocks. I took them all up to a big 5-star hotel for cocktails, early evening cocktails. They're only going to have one. And these cocktails were warm. There was no ice. There was no fresh sort of fruit in it. And it was, for a 5-star hotel, and €16 a cocktail, it was a joke. So I do actually drop this little line in, oh, don't go there. I've heard the cocktails are dreadful. So I sort of, I take things out sometimes. Oh, I wouldn't go there. It's just awful. The service is poor. But that's about as far as it goes, really.
Fair enough. One of our questions we love to ask an author is if you've ever acted out a scene.
Well, drug smuggling, money laundering. No, I haven't really acted out a scene. No, it's I can't say I have. I mean, I have been a sort of a tax lawyer in my time, so I do know a lot of the financial stuff that goes on. And in the books, I can kind of get my head around that all pretty easily. But I've never been involved in anything really that's as nefarious as I've written about, even though I do understand them. So no, I'm gonna probably plead the fifth on that one, actually.
Not necessarily crime, but we've had authors who've like tied themselves up or held knives to their throats to see what it felt like, or
No. I think I did eat a prickly pear because I've always sort of avoided them because they're so hard to handle. But one of the characters did eat a prickly pear, and it was the only thing available. So I did actually get one of those and slice it up and eat it. And it was quite nice, but it was a complete pain to peel it. But no, again, can't help you with that one, I'm afraid.
Donna has said it's a safe space. We would never dob you in.
I bet. Thank you, Donna.
So you've told us, I think you've told us a bit about book 5 that's coming out. When's your provisional release date?
Hopefully September. As I say, what I tend to do is I work with an editor, Lynn Curtis. Lynn's great. I mean, she's a hard lady, and Brooke's no nonsense. And I'll work with her and get a structural edit done. And then I'll probably go back and get a full copy edit done. And then I will show it to Adrian and Rebecca. So I've covered quite a bit of the ground, and then we see if they like it. I'd rather do that, I think, than pitch stuff into Adrian and Rebecca sort of raw. So as we stand, book 5 is done. I'm just proofing it, and I've yet to show it to them. So whether they take it or not, I don't know. But they've talked about there being space in September. And I think the first 3 were released really quickly because I had them ready, and the covers were done, and they'd been edited, and they'd been proofed, and they were good to go. So I think we launched them in July, August, September of last year. Then the 4th one, Hawk, came out in early March of this year. And what we found is that releasing a series as quickly as that, people say, oh, well, I haven't read book 2 yet, or I haven't read book 3. So I think the thinking is we try and leave about a 6-month gap to allow people to catch up before we put anything else out. So September would be the natural progression for book 5. And then book 6, as I say, is first into the 2nd draft now, and that should be ready for early 2024. So that's in my mind. That's the timetable, all being even, and if Rebecca and Adrian dictate them.
Have you got any book events lined up today?
Well, for Malta, it's a bit tricky. Do
you come out? You said you've got a house that you've kept.
Yeah.
So you must come back over.
Well, we just put it on the market actually. So we've had it for about 30 odd years, and it's a long story. But we've both my parents have just died, and unfortunately, my wife's parents have died too. So we always thought one that might come to live with us, or we didn't really know what the future held. Our sort of youngest son has now firmly ensconced himself in London, so he won't be coming back to stay with us. So we're left with this house, and it's quite obvious that it has to go. So we did used to come back every sort of, couple of weeks here, couple of weeks there, but Malta's where we're based. So it's a bit tricky to run the risk of Ryanair and get ourselves across there. But Donna's just commented, I can see on the left that she's nagging me about Harrogate. So who knows? Maybe I'll do Harrogate and shake some hands and make some friends.
If not, I mean, Bradford has a thriving literature festival, and you can merge it in with the brewery.
You're right. You're right.
Frying books and beer tasting.
I'm terrible at marketing. I suppose lots of authors are. I've got to get my wife tends to do quite a lot of it for me. Jan helps me out, but I could do more. You're quite right to call me out on it.
No, I'm not calling you out on it. I'm just genuinely.
Donna is.
Well, but Donna's a bit more asks the hard questions. We like to try and be nice and gentle here.
Please, thank you so much.
It's a safe place, as Donna has said. So yeah, I'm always interested just because I like to go to author events. It's like a really pleasant thing to do. So it's like a good question to ask. And I know that Bradford Literature Festival has some amazing events because I've just been looking at what ones I want to go and book my tickets for.
Really? Right. Okay. Well, I should look at that and see and sort of put my best foot forward and see what they say.
Yeah, it's on every year. They've got all sorts of people this year, like Lenny Henry, Val McDermid.
Really? Oh, right.
Yes, it's incredible, and it's like very matches Bradford, so it's like very culturally interesting.
Yeah.
As well.
Bradford is a very rich cultural place. I mean, it does have a lot to offer in that sense.
And Donna's worded it perfectly. She said you seem like an awesome guy, and we want to meet you. It's the long and the short of it.
Flattery will get her everywhere.
I think it's good. I think more people should do them. Like have author events and things. We're trying to organise our own as a book group.
Right. Okay.
Well, we have organised our own, but
where do you do that?
Ours is going to be in Leeds in June.
Of course, I've seen that. I know it is. Yeah. 2nd of June, in fact. I even know what the date is. Yeah.
3rd of June. But
close
enough. You were pretty close. Malcolm Hollingdrake's here. He said he was born in Bradford. Good evening.
Good evening, Malcolm. Yeah, indeed. I think Malcolm is now living in Harrogate, gone up in the world. He certainly writes in Harrogate.
Yeah, he definitely writes based in a Harrogate. But then there's a rich vein of Great Yorkshire.
There are.
I'm trying to keep track of everything that's coming up. Sam asked you what inspired you to sit down and write the first book. Then I'm going to ask you my question that I wanted to ask.
Right. Okay. So
Sam first.
Right, Sam first book. Yeah. Okay. COVID, I think, probably did it for me. I had a good friend, a university friend, who writes some really nice books, and he self-publishes. He has no interest in marketing them, and I think he's been doing it for about the last 10 years, really. And I thought, well, if Martin can do it, I'll give it a go. And I had the idea of sort of the plot. I mean, straight from the headlines, the oil smuggling and Maltese police and corruption. And the thing that made me do it was that I think at the time my dad was very, very sick. And so I was traveling backwards and forwards to the UK. And every time I came back to Malta, I had 2 weeks quarantine. But I used to go to the UK and have another 2 weeks quarantine. So it was, bubbles and quarantine. I had a lot of time by myself. And I just sat down one night and started writing, really. It was as simple as that. And I've never really stopped. I get up in the morning and I'm sort of at the desk by about 9. I usually work through to about 1. Afternoons, I do stuff, errands, whatever. And then usually have a look at it and review between 6 and 7:30 before dinner. And that tends to be my day. So I can be, in that sense, fairly productive. and research as I go along. That's the other thing.
Sam has said so many authors started out during lockdowns. You're all such an inspiration, which is true. I worked in lockdown on and off, either from home or at work, and I was very unproductive working from home.
Yeah, I think it depends what your circumstances are. I mean, I think I was very unproductive when we were homeschooling our grandchildren. I tell you, 5 and 7 or something. They were awful. But the whole homeschooling thing, I found, I don't know how people managed with that. But that was only for a few weeks. But if you've got a sort of, a quiet room and a desk and a garden to look at, it was much more conducive to getting stuff done than being locked up with some kids in a tower block. I mean, I think some people must have had horrendous experiences, but fortunately ours wasn't like that. So we had space and we had time, and I think as you get older, you get more patience, and you can take the upside of the lockdown, enjoy the books, and a quiet walk is probably all you need, really. You're not burning with energy, it worked for us.
Yeah, I mean, there were some good things about lockdown. I just worked out that I'm very not good at working from home.
Yeah, well, I suppose if if you're teaching whatever you do, and you've got your day mapped out in your timetable, and that drives you forwards, don't you? You go from one experience to the next. But if you've always been someone who has been a bit of a self-starter, I suppose. Having said that, when you brew beer, of course, the clock drives you forwards. It's all about what's boiling when and what needs to be cooled, and the mechanics of it. It's the day tends to go very, very fast when you're brewing beer. That was for sure.
I'm so fast. I could spend an hour talking to you about your craft brewery, but we won't do that. So once you finish, because you said you don't know how many books you would write with your character now, have you thought about other things that you would write? Would you be tempted to do some standalones?
Well, I have. I've done a first draft of a book in a totally different genre, totally new. It's been through my editor, Lynn Curtis, who said, "You must be mad." But I've gone back and I've revised it again. And again, it's another sort of attempt to write something which is a little bit more cozy, something which is... I actually have an elevator pitch here. Do you want the elevator pitch?
Go on. Why?
You think? Okay, we'll see. As I say it's a bit cozy, part historical, dollop of comedy, and a little dollop of the supernatural. So I'd like to put some comedy in the books, and I think comedy books are good. It's set around a group of alternative therapists who work out of a wellness centre, and that is set in a Yorkshire market town. I think Ilkley, Otley, Hebden Bridge. One of the things that interests me is, all the sort of, the Reiki and homeopathy and, spiritual healing and all the rest of it. Crystals, are very much faith-based. And if you look at churches today and what you get from the Eucharist and turning wine into to the blood of Christ, and, your rosary beads and your cross, I mean, they're just the same. It's and I found it quite interesting to sort of get involved in that. And the story is set around basically a conservatory, and the conservatory used to belong to a stately home. And in the stately home back in the 1600s, there was a woman who was a healer, and she gathered around her healers, midwives, women who were basically in trouble socially, including women who were accused of witchcraft. And she made remedies and basically herbal medicine, and she produced a book. This book gets lost over 400 years. We track it over 400 years, and it ends up in the hands of our therapist friends in Ilkley, Otley, or Hebden Bridge, and it is being chased by people across time who want to get hold of it, because in the back are basically incantations, spells, learnings, which can do great harm. So it's a bit of a whodunit, and it's as much about the relationship of the 4 women. The 4 women are all sort of need something to sort of complete themselves. One is an aging sort of hippie who's never really found herself and experimented with drugs and all this sort of stuff. One is a goth who was an orphan, very young, who is involved in sort of mediums, mystics to try and discover the past about herself. Another one is a middle-aged woman who's a bit of a sort of a frumpy county type who's involved in a failing marriage with an alcoholic husband. And these women are offered bribes by one of the characters who is pursuing them, which will complete them. And it's a question as to whether they will fall for the bribes, whether they'll work together, whether they'll find out what the book is, where it is, what the secrets are, and how they can actually remedy the situation. So that's the story. So it's very different from George marauding around the Mediterranean, and getting involved in geopolitical scraps. So that's it really, and that's what I'm working on. And I can see a 3-book series based around these women and ley lines and magic and bits and pieces. So very different. It might work, it might not. And I don't know whether I'll do it under AJ Aberford or find another pen name and a totally different style and set up something totally separately.
Well, you sold me and Donna on it with your elevator.
Good. Well, we'll see. Yeah.
I love a book with a bit of witchcraft and the supernatural in.
Well, yeah.
Or anything historical. Just music for my ears. All those kind of things. My jam of books.
Okay. Well, I shall keep you all informed as to how far I get on with it.
Please do. We all think it sounds fascinating. Janet wanted to know what Malta was like during lockdown. I'd imagine in a small town, a small place, like a very enclosed island, you can have a lot more problems getting things and stuff. I'm quite lucky where I live because it's a big city and it's not that hard to walk places and find things. And
yeah. I mean, Malta is incredibly. It's like a big city. It is a big city. It's one big city. It has 450,000 people and it's about 20 miles by 15. In the summer, it gets about 2 million tourists. So it is very, very busy. In lockdown, it was fantastic because the flights were taken off, the tourists didn't come. We had the whole island to ourselves. So, there were empty beaches, and Valletta, which is a beautiful, beautiful city, usually packed with cruise ships and all the rest of it, was marvelous. You could walk down empty streets and appreciate everything. The government were really, really strict. You had to wear face masks outside at all times. When I did my quarantine and I sort of checked in when I came back, they used to visit the house and bang on the door twice a day. It could be 8 in the morning, it could be 10 at night, but I always got 2 knocks a day to check that I was inside the house. So restaurants were all shut. And because Malta's in the EU and it's within Schengen, you tended to get a lot of East European people who came to basically run the restaurants, And once the flights had stopped and they couldn't get out, and if they were Schengen, they weren't actually registered as residents, you found a lot of people were stuck and had no money. So there was a lot of trouble. There wasn't a lot of trouble on the streets, but there were people from sort of, as I say, the Eastern European countries who couldn't get home for a period, and that made life difficult. Certainly difficult for them. So it was a bit different to the UK, but we had the weather, we had the sea. So it was, and we had the town to ourselves, we had the city to ourselves. So those were the positives.
Sam has said that I hated working from home. She thrived on it. I didn't hate working from home. I was either really good and got like everything done in about 2 hours. Like loads done really, really fast, or I spent a whole day doing very little. It was like one or the other.
And do you work from home? Do you work from home now? Has it changed your sort of your habits, or you?
No, well, teaching's not really a work from home job.
Yeah, no, I suppose. A lot of lecturers I know sort of seem to spend a lot of time sitting in front of blanked out screens. None of the kids put the pictures on. It's all just for all this sort of safeguarding philosophy, and just talking to a blank screen. I find it quite amazing.
Yeah, I'm not good at being stuck at home either. That's what I'm saying. I'm very bad at being stuck at home. I had to be out at least once a day, as well. I'm very, very bad at it. I missed coffee, like from the coffee shop.
Right. Okay. So it was the social stuff that went on. Yeah. It's
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Just really, really not good. The happiest time of lockdown was when they reopened the coffee shop. Going
I,
for really nice coffee.
yeah. I must admit, doing the writing, it is a pretty solitary thing. I spend a lot of time by myself, which I've never been used to, and it's and I think, as I say, when you get older, you become happy with a quiet approach to life. But I was always pretty sociable, and I always worked in sort of big teams and was used to that, and so that has been a bit of a thing. I do wonder whether I've become a little bit too introverted, too happy with my own company. I should get out more, I think is the phrase.
Malcolm's intrigued into your thoughts about Black Sheep.
Black Sheep, heartbreaking, isn't it? Absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah, nothing I can say about it. Iconic brewery, iconic brand, and I think they've always sort of. We're going to talk beer? So I always think, they've struggled with diversification. I think the geographical locations, distribution's always been a problem for them. And they haven't really, as a family brewery, responded to the new challenge of the craft beer, which a lot of the other breweries have done. So I don't know too much about it, but that would be my kind of off the cuff remarks about Black Sheep. But sad day, very sad day.
Donna also loved lockdown.
Good for Donna. Yeah.
Good for Donna. Yeah. I mean, there were some great things. I loved buses in lockdown. Absolutely brilliant. One of my favourite things. And not happy that that's gone back to how it used to be.
No. Well, I mean, we watched the Godfather series from start to not the Godfather series, Sopranos from start to finish again. So that was something I would never have done had it not been for lockdown. That was
you discovered a lot of things that were like fun to do, and you spend like I live with my partner, and it was really nice to spend time with them, and things. There's like a lot of good things about it. I just discovered that I need to be channeled into a productive direction.
Exactly.
Isn't at a computer. She said she wouldn't have gotten to start her group, Donna. We wouldn't have done these video interviews.
No. Yeah, I think it was a watershed. I don't know. It just seems such a long time ago now. That's the strange thing, and how quickly. I always thought it would be one of those things that would change life forever. A bit like Twin Towers or some of these, cataclysmic events. But people have just slid back into their own way. It's just amazing how resilient people are.
Yeah, I was hoping people had stopped being a bit less gross about like spitting everywhere and wiping their noses on things. But
well, I can assure you, I've stopped doing all that.
Yeah, not generally everywhere though. So how about a quick fire round of some of our favourite author chat questions for you? Just finished. We've got about 5 minutes.
Go on then.
Would you make a graphic novel version of one of your books?
What? Sorry, a graphic version?
A graphic novel version, like a comic book.
Yeah.
But
you think could somebody do one? Was that the question?
Your book? Would you think your book would lend itself to one?
I think that Fire in the Mountain is very visual with the volcano, and there's people captured in tunnels, and yeah, I think Fire in the Mountain would work best, just purely because of the sort of the setting and the Etna and the various locations. I think it would work quite nicely, actually. Yeah, I can see that.
Excellent. Most memorable moments as an author so far?
I think being picked up by Adrian and Rebecca. I opened my phone in the supermarket to find out that they wanted to work with me, and I was absolutely delighted. I had a tear in my eye. So it's and as I say, it's I say I'm a published author. It still kind of gives me a buzz.
Yeah, a good team to be with in Hoback as well.
They're great. Yeah, great people, very genuine. I listen to the podcasts, and you get great insights and you get great honesty into their own business. And I think everybody knows what to expect. That's the thing with them.
And if there was a TV or film adaptation of your book, who would you play?
Who would I play?
Oh,
I think I'd like to play the hawk, the Turkish fixer who sort of smoothly moves between the lines and works. And he gets to, of course, to have the relationship with the beautiful but very evil Natasha, which I think would be fantastic.
How's Turkish?
Non-existent. I can't even pronounce it. That's OLGU in Uglu, whatever it is. I mean, I look at that in the names. No Turkish at all. I'm absolutely hopeless with languages. I've got a smattering of Italian. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm not the best. I know a little bit of Turkish, but not mad amounts.
No, I'm hoping. My wife is so good with it. She did languages at university. She got Italian, Russian, Polish, French. She's doing Spanish. She's great, and it makes me so lazy because I can just sit back and she sorts everything out. So that's it's not an incentive to learn, unfortunately.
And then finish us off. Got about 4 minutes left. Right, you've been marvellous to have on as an interviewee. Finish
It's
us
been
off
a pleasure.
with a reminder of what people are going to go and buy if they've been watching and enjoying this chat.
Well, the first thing, obviously, the reminder is oops, Daisy. So I knocked the mouse there. It's the George Savitt series. It starts with Bodies in the Water, and Bodies in the Water is poor George gets sent to attend a conference in Libya, which there's a lot of to and fro between Malta and Libya, strong links, where he gets kidnapped. And his only way of escaping is on a migrant raft. So he comes back on a migrant raft and in the company of a migrant drug smuggler who becomes his partner in crime and with whom he has a relationship over the next 3 books. Second, Bullets in the Sand, George and Abdullah Belkacem, who is the drug smuggler, get swarmed by the Americans to sort out the Wagner Group. Now, you've heard a lot about the Wagner Group in recent days, but they have been very active in Libya, and the Americans have been under the sort of the radar, involved in proxy wars with them. And in my proxy war, George and Abdullah get dragged into it. So that's that one. Next one is Hawk at the Crossroads. The Turks decide that they're going to extend their territorial waters to steal most of Greece's oil. And just south of Crete, there's a wonderful little island called Gavdos, and George is sent to invade that island. Why? You'll find out in the book. And there's also a good jailbreak in that one as well. I like that. And Fire in the Mountain, George's boss's niece gets kidnapped, taken by the mafia to Sicily, and is held in a tunnel in an exploding volcano. And George is sent to rescue her, where he meets all sorts of objections and problems. So those are the 4 books. Well worth a read.
And very enjoyable with a nice glass of Saltaire.
All the better for that. Yes.
Yeah, paired perfectly.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, exactly.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Good. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Oh, did you just drop a book?
No, I just dropped the mouse again. So I'm just right. I'm back. Okay. Good. Thank you very much indeed, Carla.